Hello, everyone. I'm Allie Wyatt. I am co-founder and CEO of Female Founder Collective, and I wanted to jump in here. I hope that you enjoyed the last session. I know that I'm feeling super motivated and ready to claim my worth. But I wanted to speak a little bit more about why we're doing this event. And then I have the great fortune of introducing the next session, which is going to be an amazing one. I've been the beneficiary actually of getting to work with Marguerite. So I'll kick it over to her in a second, but I just wanted to share a couple of things. And first of all, it's that we're super excited that Capital One is doing this because this is a topic, funding in general and growth in general, that we really want to be helpful for all founders in supporting their journey as they grow and getting funded in whatever way is best for you. So there's not one right way, as Rebecca mentioned in the last session, and you really have to do your research to figure out what's best for you. But we're hoping this will equip you. But wanted to speak for a moment about Capital One Business because they are committed to supporting businesses of all sizes like yours, from budding entrepreneurs to growth stage companies. And they really believe, as we do, that small businesses are the cornerstone of communities across the country. And that's why they're focused on connecting our diverse community of business owners and entrepreneurs with the financial products and services that you need to help move your business forward. So thank you very much to the Capital One team. And a quick note about Female Founder Collective. If you don't know who we are a platform for supporting and empowering and enabling female founded businesses to find equality, both socially as well as economically. And we most recently launched the 10th House, which is our private membership community where, as you saw some of the founders in the last panel, really speaking about the importance of community, we wanted to have a place where you could find other founders by stage, by industry, by geography, so they could really help you see around corners and so that you could actually get weekly programming. You know, this is sort of a supercharged version of what we offer in there. So we're really excited and thankful to Capital One for allowing us to do this with them. But we also will match you with other like-minded, like gold founders as well. And then we have over 20 partners that offer an incredible assortment of discounts too. We just rolled out a monthly payment option, which is super exciting. And we also have a grant of 10K that 3 individual businesses will get that are out of New York City. So check us out. But without further ado, super excited to introduce Marguerite. Marguerite is actually, great stat, our outsourced CFO. And so she is the perfect person to really speak on finding and hiring your financial special forces, which there are many people that are going to protect your business as it grows. Quick, couple stats about Marguerite and how incredible she is that she is a former Wall Street financial analyst at Goldman Sachs, NYU Stern School of Business alum. She is former mergers and acquisitions manager of Deloitte Consulting, and she's a top ranked business money expert named Atlanta's 40 under 40 by their Business Chronicle. She's an accredited angel investor. She's the host of My Profit Playbook, which is a leading business and financial planning training program. And she also was just named in Forbes as well. So you have the best of the best who's going to be running this session today. She's incredibly engaging. And I actually found Marguerite in participating in a similar session to this. So hopefully she'll give you some tips on how to find incredible people like her.
Thank you so much, Allie. It is such a pleasure to be with you all today. As Allie mentioned, the Females Founder Collective 10th House has been such a credible resource for me, and I'm so glad that you all get to experience it along with Capital One today. So As Ali mentioned, we are going to be talking all about those special financial forces in your business. And my goal is for this to be as interactive as possible. So as we're going through this workshop, if you have questions, stop me, happy to answer, but then I'll also promise that I'm going to reserve some time at the end for questions. So let me go ahead and share my screen so we can dive right in. Okay, so ultimately, where we're going to focus our time together today, and let me make sure everyone can see. All right, I think we're good. Okay, so Ali told you all about me. I'll make sure to save this slide for the end as well if you want to connect with me. But ultimately, as Ali mentioned, I have been in the financial industry for almost 15 years now. So this is a topic that I'm so passionate about, being able to help others really get their financial house in order so that you can ultimately build that generational wealth. So you can always feel free to reach out via these channels. But again, I'll put this slide at the end. I'm pretty much Marguerite Pressley Davis, or Finance Savvy CEO, on all the different platforms. All right, so what can you expect out of today? So ultimately, I think before we even talk about what are those financial special forces you need, I'm going to ground you on why it even matters. I know when you have a small business, a lot of the times it can feel like you are wearing so many different hats. Maybe one day you are talking to customers, the next day you're trying to do your own bookkeeping, and maybe another day you're building products, right? So it can feel like a lot as a small business owner, but my goal is by the end of this is you'll know exactly the importance of some of those financial forces that you need on your team, but also how to identify them, the whole nine. What we'll do after I've kind of convinced you why they're so important, I'm going to walk you through every single resource of your financial special forces that you need. I have some activities baked in, and then of course we'll do questions during activity time also. I'm going to try to do at least 10 minutes at the end for Q&A. So if you don't have, if you want to save it for the end, that's great, or you can stop me in between. All right, so let's first ground ourselves on why do these special forces even matter? Like, Marguerite, why can't I just do everything on my own financial related as I run my business? So let's first ground ourselves on like, what's going on with this? Well, ultimately, when it comes to financial forces in your business, your goal is to protect your financial assets. What do I mean by that? The assets in your business could be anything from actual cash that you're generating to IP that you're protecting. But your goal as that business owner is you want to be able to maximize your profitability. How much of that cash, that hard-earned cash that you're making, that you keep in your business, okay? So, well, why does it matter for me to protect those assets and keep as much money as I need? Well, ultimately, so you can grow and scale your business, right? So let's think about for a second how that works, right? At the end of any month or any year, what are you left with? It's profits, right? Some months, understand, there may not be any profits left, but think about it this way. The more that your profit pool grows, the more money that you have to make decisions around, how can I reinvest this cash? How can I reinvest it to maybe buy the next piece of equipment I need to really get my business going and booming, right? Maybe it's with these profits you make decisions around, well, ultimately, can I pay myself a bonus for all the hard work I'm doing, right? But it all comes back to being able to make those decisions around reinvesting in bonuses if you've protected your financial assets, if you've protected that cash and maximize the amount of profits that you're making. So you may say, Marguerite, well, that's kind of a lot to have to run my business and think about also operating it in such a way that I can maximize my profitability so that I can grow and scale. How am I supposed to fit that all in one day? Well, how? That is where your financial special forces That's where they come into play. And that's how they can help you make sure you're keeping an eye on all of the right things. So let's dive into what are those special forces, all right? So I like to call it the financial trifecta, okay? So if you're having a conversation with your colleagues and you say, hey, I have my financial trifecta down, this is what you're referring to, those financial forces, okay? So while there are many areas of support that you can have in your business, there's three main ones that make up this trifecta that help you to create that strong financial foundation that's going to set you up for success. And when I say success, financial success, maximizing your profitability. All right, so let's dive into the first one. The very first one is your bookkeeper. And I have this at the base of the trifecta for a very particular reason. So what your bookkeeper does is actually the foundation of your special forces, okay? This bookkeeper, they're recording your day-to-day business financial transactions, and they're basically putting them on library shelves. And I'll explain to you just a bit about what library shelves are, and I'm even going to walk you through an example, okay? So your bookkeeper is doing things like sending and following up on your invoices. They're doing things like reconciling to make sure that, hey, did you receive this payment that you thought you were going to receive? They're tracking down your cash flows and making sure if I was expected to receive, call it $10,000 in cash, did that $10,000 in cash get received? Okay. And then ultimately what they do is they support setting up your chart of accounts. And chart of accounts, as I told you to tell you about in a little bit, is the library shelves. So let's talk about what that means. So ultimately, what happens when you go into a library? Well, when you go into the library, there's different sections in the library. I can find a section that's all about cooking. I can find a section that's all about sports. I can find a section that has all of the magazines. You get my point here, right? There's all the different areas that I can go to ultimately find what I need easily. Now imagine what would happen if you walked into the library and there were no longer those shelves. Sports was mixed in with cooking, cooking was mixed in with science fiction. Think about the time that you would have figuring out what in the world is going on. Where can I just put my hand on Chef Ramsay's latest cooking book? It would be pretty difficult, right? Well, that is the exact same reason of why this bookkeeper is one of your special forces. Because ultimately, I want you to similarly think through, when's the last time you opened up your bank statement? All right. When you opened up that bank statement, all that was there was a list of different transactions, right? You maybe saw a transaction for Uber that you had where you got a yummy meal for your team. You may have had a line item on there that was for MailChimp where you paid for support of your email marketing services. But the point is it's pretty difficult to just look at that bank statement and say, here's what's going on in my business. Pretty challenging, right? So this is where the bookkeeper comes in. What the bookkeeper is going to do is she or he is going to determine the library shelves or the type of expenses that you have so that when those transactions are coming in, they can be put on the appropriate shelves, right? So if I see things like ultimately I have a McDonald's transaction, I have an ultimate Capital Grill transaction, I could look at it and say, okay, I have transactions on my bank statement, but what that bookkeeper is going to do is she or he is going to create one library shelf that ultimately says meals and entertainment. And then they'll be able to put those individual transactions on the appropriate library shelves so you can easily see that, oh, I spent $2,000 on food for the team this month for conferences, for meals, right? So that is what the critical importance of that bookkeeper is. He or she is going to be not only determining the right shelves that you need for your type of business, but they're also going to be tracking those transactions and putting them in the appropriate shelves so that you can have better visibility into what's happening in that business. Okay. So that's primary. But now, ultimately, there's some other things as well. Your bookkeeper is the first point of contact to your financial transactions, okay? So ultimately what's happening is that bookkeeper is going to see every time, you're swiping the card and it's coming through your bank. So they're also going to ensure that the financial data that's coming in is actually accurate, right? And they're going to make sure it's reasonable before they just send you off your financial statements of, hey, here's how you did from a revenue perspective, and here's how you may have done from a profitability perspective. Okay, this is core because I want you to think about something, right? At the end of the week, if you're spending time trying to get those transactions from your bank statement onto the right library shelves, that could be valuable time as the CEO that you're doing something else. When a bookkeeper could step in, make sure there's no duplications of items, they can help you pay bills, and ultimately ensure that you have the data that is understandable and accurate, okay? So before we take action here, I'm gonna pause and I'm gonna check the chat and see if there's any questions on bookkeeping, because this is a critical point on ultimately getting the base of your financial transaction. So I'm gonna go to the chat here, see if there's any questions. Okay, so one question here is, any tips on finding a reputable bookkeeper? Absolutely. So ultimately, one of the things that I think is the misnomer, and we'll get into it in just a bit, is when you're finding a bookkeeper, is you don't necessarily have to have someone who is I will say a specialist in accounting or a specialist in necessarily financial analytics. You specifically want to see that they have bookkeeping services. There's not a necessarily like the CPA certification that you need for this, or financial analytics, financial advisor for bookkeeper. You want to look for somebody who, one, has experience in bookkeeping and has performed bookkeeping for other referrals, I would say, or for other companies. Here's what you want to keep in mind when making that decision. Always ask, what size companies do they work for, right? What type of accounting that they do with bookkeeping. Now, without getting too much in detail of the types of accounting, one of the things you want to be sure to ask for is, do they do your bookkeeping on a cash or an accrual basis, okay? That is really key, because oftentimes what you will find with bookkeepers is that they can tend to do bookkeeping purely on a cash basis. And when I say a cash basis, they are only recording transactions based on when money is provided and money is received, or when money is spent and money is received. But now for some companies, if you do invoicing, meaning you may not get paid exactly while that is, when you sent out that invoice, then you need a bookkeeper who also knows how to do accrual accounting. Accrual accounting, meaning that they'll keep tracking for you as well, accounts that still need to be paid, accounts that are outstanding, receivables, the whole nine. So that is a clear distinction. If you invoice others and may not get paid right then, please ask the question if your bookkeeper does accrual accounting, okay? And one of the things that I was getting to with a bookkeeper is, when it comes to the seniority of your resources, bookkeepers on the seniority end, you typically can find individuals who may just have certifications or specifically do bookkeeping, and they can be more junior resources, but you just want to make sure, look at how many years they've been doing it. Business types is what I would leave you with there. Okay, and I think there was a couple more questions on bookkeeping before I move on. Okay, this is actually a great question. Jenny was asking around, she's been going back and forth between cash and accrual bookkeeping. What are the pros and cons of both? Well, when it comes to bookkeeping, one of the big pros of doing accrual accounting is that it allows you to be able to see what invoices are still outstanding and need to be collected, versus ultimately, is this true revenue for my business? Let me give you an example, because to make that a bit more clear. Let's say that you run a business, and let's say that you sell candles, okay? And a person comes and they buy those candles off of your website. Well, ultimately, in a cash-based business, that revenue is going to get recorded as soon as that cash or that transaction is completed on your website and it's connecting to your bookkeeping information. It's going to happen, right? It's going to get recorded. So cash accounting could work great for a business like that. But let me give you a contrast. Let's say that very same candle business doesn't just simplistically sell the candles online. Let's say that they often also will work with a retailer. And so they may send off the candles to the retailer for sale, but they may have not gotten the cash for it. So ultimately, if it was a cash-based accounting, they could only record the revenue from those candles ultimately when the retailer decides to pay them for it. But if you are using accrual accounting, you technically can count the revenue for those candles once you send the invoice, right? But you may not actually, but you won't be able to record the cash for the transaction until that invoice is actually paid. So the distinction is accrual-based accounting in that situation is going to be way more, give you a better accurate picture of what's truly happening from a cash perspective than if you were just running your business on cash-based accounting. Okay. And if you more questions on that too, please feel free to follow up on that, because I don't want to go too detailed into the technical accounting there. But the big advantage is 9 times out of 10, if you have a business where you're invoicing, accrual-based accounting is going to be much more accurate picture for you than if you did cash-based accounting. Okay. The reason cash-based accounting is ultimately great is because it's easy. All right. So let me know if that answered your question, Jenny, and if not, definitely feel free to follow up. Okay, question on what's the average cost to hire a bookkeeper? It really depends on the complexity of your business, Jasmine. So cash-based accounting, if a bookkeeper is doing cash-based accounting, 9 times out of 10, that's actually going to be a bit less expensive than ultimately accrual-based accounting, because more is involved with keeping up with the invoices, ensuring that your balance sheet is also aligned accordingly to that. Okay. All right, let's see. I'm going to take one more question on this point before we move to the second part of your trifecta. And again, we can definitely save those to the end as well. All right, let's see here. Yeah, I think, Julie, this is a really important question on making sure, like advice on trusting someone else to manage your finances. I definitely can understand that concern as well. But what you'll see in a bit that we'll get to is one of the third pieces in your trifecta. Ultimately, think of these financial forces as they are supporting you in the process, right? They're your special forces where you are still a part of that as that business owner, as that small business owner, you're still involved, right? What I always coach on is I want you to be empowered to be a part of the process, right? I want you to be empowered to be having these conversations with your bookkeeper and your other financial forces. So don't think of it as I'm just handing it all and putting my finances all in their hands. No, you definitely should be actively involved in conversations with them on a frequent basis, because that's what's also going to give you the confidence, right? It's going to give you the feeling of, okay, I can now trust that they're doing it correctly, but I also know that I'm having frequent check-ins with them as well. Okay. All right. So one of the actions that I want you all to take, because hopefully at this point, you are convinced that potentially a bookkeeper can help you do some of the tasks with ensuring that your financial transactions are put on the right library shelves. They're following up with the payment of different invoices. So what I want you to do here is, if you have a notebook or just a scrap sheet of paper, that's okay too. I want you to set a date for yourself that you want to search for a bookkeeper, or I will say an automated accounting solution that can do the bookkeeping for you, for help. So all I want you to do is just write the date down of when you'll reach out to this individual or do some research on some software that can help you, because when we write dates down, they become a reality. All right. The other thing I want you to do is say, let's say you have a bookkeeper in mind, write their name down that coincides with that date that you're going to be reaching out. All right. And if you need another accounting solution as it relates to bookkeeping too, like you're like, I want my bookkeeper to keep up with payroll as well, or I want my bookkeeper to help reaching out with those invoices, write that solution you'll search for as well. Okay. And we do Q&A at the end. I'll talk to you about a resource hub as well that's completely free that you can search for some recommendations there as well. All right. Let's go to the next financial force that you need in your trifecta. And I know there's a few questions that I didn't get to, but I promise I'll save time at the end to get through them just so we can keep on our roll with our trifecta. All right. The next financial force that I want in your trifecta is a certified tax professional. Okay. Now keep in mind, I'm very intentional about using the word certified tax professional. So ultimately, one of the things that we want to think about is, well, why do we need that certified tax professional? Well, one of the core things that a certified tax professional is going to do is him or her is going to protect you from being in compliance or out of compliance when it relates to taxes. And they are also going to help you to minimize your tax liabilities. So one of the analogies that I like to use here for your financial special forces, and I get this a lot in the financial industry, is I'm going to compare it to your medical doctors, right? We have what are general practitioners, right? And you can go to your general practitioner for, let's say, your annual checkup, right? But we have special areas, right? You have, let's say you have your dermatologist and you go and talk to them all things about skin because they are laser focused in that area. Okay, you have your dentist, they're a doctor too, but typically you're not going to talk to the your general doctor, your general physician about your teeth. You're going to go to the doctor. The dentist. It is no different here with how I want you to think about your trifecta. Okay, accounting transactions, keeping them in place. I want you to think of the bookkeeper. Taxes. While you could go to a generalist, a general financial person or a generalist accounting to do your taxes, you absolutely can. But for your financial forces, I am going to recommend that you go to a certified tax professional and you have that certified tax professional on your team. Why? Because a certified tax professional studies taxes, changes in taxes, deductions day in and day out. So they are going to be well-versed on those opportunities you can take advantage of with new deductions that are coming about, or maybe even specific local law, tax laws as it relates to deductions you can take because of the zone that your business is in, okay? But now, what's the critical piece here that you see that I have on the screen? The bookkeeping must be properly in place to have a smooth and orderly, favorable tax solution. Why? Your certified tax professional, they're actually going to be making decisions about your tax liability, tax deductions that you can take based upon what those financial statements are telling them, okay? And what helps to comprise the financial statements? Your bookkeeper, because they are putting all of those different transactions on the library shelf, okay? So when you think of it this way, and hopefully now it's more clear of why the bookkeeper is the basis of your financial trifecta, because it's the work that they're doing to really account for the financial transactions that empowers that certified tax professional to be able to help you make decisions that will minimize your tax liability, maximize the tax deductions that you can get. They're going to make sure that you're filing those quarterly and annual taxes on time, and ultimately they'll help you avoid penalties. Now, one of the biggest things that I hear when it comes to having a certified tax professional is people will say, but Marguerite, having a certified tax professional is pretty expensive. And hey, I get it, but I want you to think of it in a different way. Having a certified tax professional on your team, they actually can be critical and vital in helping you save and paying in taxes at the end of the quarter or end of the year, depending upon your tax structure. Okay, so I like this meme here because it's that tax professional. They're that middle person between you as the ultimate CEO or owner of your business and the IRS. Certified tax professionals are great. If, let's say, there's an issue or a question that the IRS has about something on your financials, well, what happens? With the certified tax professional as one of your special forces, they can step in and have that conversation with the IRS for you so that you can continue building, growing, scaling your business focused on profitability. Okay. So the action that I want you to take here is I want you to put out a date, because again, I'm all about put the date in practice of if you don't have that certified tax professional, what date are you going to reach out to them, right? And if you have someone in mind already, write that name down, okay? Or if it's a solution, one of your special forces, let's say you want to use a company, a bigger company versus an individual, that's okay too. Just write that solution down. And while you're doing this, I'm going to take a peek at the chat and see if we have any questions at all on tax professionals before I move to the next one. All right, let's see. Give me a moment to scroll through. All right, love this. Okay. All right, Ferris says that this picture, that's what it feels like for sure. Yep, totally get it. They get to step in there. LaDonna sounds like she agrees too. All right, perfect. Okay, so Delia, you said, how about if you're a nonprofit? Yes, Delia, even if you're a nonprofit, I am still going to recommend you having that certified tax professional as well. Many of my clients are nonprofits also, and believe me, who they have on their team also is that certified tax professional. One thing, Delia, though, if you have a nonprofit that I want you to be keen on when you're looking for your certified tax professional, make sure they have experience with nonprofits as well, okay? I wanna make sure that you do that, because sometimes they may tell you that they only focus on for-profits, and there's definitely distinctions when it comes to taxes, especially if you're a 501(c)(3) nonprofit, and you wanna make sure they are well versed, okay? All right, Kush, perfect question. You say, when do I recommend hiring a bookkeeper versus an accounting solution versus using Excel? That is a beautiful question. So here's how I recommend it. First and foremost, the maturity of your business and the number of transactions really influences this. So let me give you an example. Let's say that you're a business where you only do a handful of transactions a year that are pretty straightforward, okay? And I'll get a little bit more specific. Let's say that you run a consulting agency. And in your consulting agency, you support, you consult new moms on how to transition to new mom life, okay? And let's say that you have 4 core clients a year, okay? And those 4 core clients, ultimately, it's very straightforward. You have their annual rate that they pay you. And let's say you really don't have a ton of monthly expenses. So for you, if you have a similar business, not necessarily the transition of moms, but where you have very few transactions, it's pretty easy to keep up with. An accounting solution is easy as something, and again, there's a resource hub. If you just go to financesavvyco.com, there's a free resource hub, and you can kind of see some of the accounting solutions that I recommend there. But ultimately, that could be something that you monitor yourself, right? And you simply just have your own accounting software software and you send out those 4 invoices once a month and you have minimal expenses and you can see those come through the software. Okay. But one of the things that I recommend, so I want you to factor in the complexity of your business. That's one consideration. The second consideration that I want you to think of before you decide an accounting solution or software versus a bookkeeper is ask yourself, how comfortable are you with the concept of bookkeeping? Because the pitfall that I see way too often is people just deep dive into saying, oh, I'm going to go and just get this accounting software. All my business besties are using it. But then what they do is they spend more time trying to understand how to use and navigate the software than actually, doing the bookkeeping. So first and foremost, before you ever just say, I'm going to dive right into an accounting solution or accounting software, first get yourself versed on what is my bookkeeping lookout? What library shelves do I have? What type of transactions? Okay. And to get yourself in the mode, I actually love, if you're just starting up, you have a smaller size business, you can start with Excel and then transition into a software if you're not comfortable with it. Because again, I don't want you to fall into the pitfall of getting so overwhelmed by the software that you get lost in what's actually happening transaction-wise in your business. And if it's manageable for Excel for you, that's okay too. The other consideration factor that I want you to use to consider is cost. Bookkeepers tend to run more expensive than ultimately just using a software yourself, where you're going to pay, let's call it $40 a month. For a small business that's not really complex, you could get a bookkeeper as low as, let's call it, in the $100 range. Okay. So $100 range, depending on your business type, could be a significant cost to you compared to the $40 if you just wanted to do an Excel yourself or you wanted to use the software. Okay. So I want you to consider cost. I want you to understand how complex is your business. Are you ready to use the software? Is it simple enough where you can just use Excel? So there's no one right decision, but I want you to consider that to determine, is it a good fit for you or not? And as you grow and you scale your business, which I know all of you are going to do, being here and having Capital One and, Females Founder Collective be able to support you in growing and scaling, right? The ideal would be that, yes, go ahead and get that special force of the bookkeeper. And I'll also leave you with, the sooner you can start using the bookkeeper and taking it off your plate, the better, if it makes sense for your business. Okay. And I'll take one more question on bookkeeping certified tax professional, before I move to the next one. Let's see here. Okay. And then Kush, we'll just finish off your question for the next one. You said, do bookkeeper charge by the hours or number of transactions? It just depends. I always refer bookkeepers, and some of them do by the hour and some of them do by the number of transactions, but definitely consider this. And I always like to have a set flat rate for when you're working with a bookkeeper, right? So typically what they'll do is they'll say, if you're either in a range of revenue, it'll be a certain price. If you are ultimately in a range of specific number of transactions, you'll be in a certain price bucket. And then the other consideration factor that will impact your price push is it's also going to be one of the concepts that I talked to you about earlier, if you're want them to do cash based or accrual based with you. Okay. So consider all those things, and every bookkeeper is going to work a bit different there. All right, let's get cranking so I can show you all the third part of your financial trifecta. All right, so the third part that rounds off your financial trifecta is going to be your CFO that's going to support you with financial planning and analysis. Okay. Again, going back to my example of when you go to the doctor, just like that in the finance area, there's certain areas that people have their specialties. Bookkeeping here you saw was the bottom of our trifecta. Then next we have the certified tax professional, and the third specialty, financial planning analysis, which your CFO is going to help you with. All right. So how do we think about your CFO special force and financial planning analysis? So let's connect the dots. So based on your bookkeeper's work to create those accurate financial statements for you, financial records, this is going to best position your CFO or fractional CFO or outsourced CFO to help you develop those financial strategies, okay? Now, your CFO, they're going to play a major role in helping you to strategize your next business move. They're going to help you make decisions about if you take this action, what impact does it have on you from a financial perspective, okay? So let's think of it this way. So you have these financial statements that the bookkeeper has created for you because ultimately they made sure all of those transactions were accurate, all right? This is where you are now powered up to have that conversation with your CFO and talk strategy, okay? With your CFO, you are going to be having these executive level conversations around, do I even need to raise capital? How much capital do I need to raise? How long will this cash last me? Can I make this higher? Do we need to actually change our pricing? Do we need to change our business model? Is it working? Are the expenses actually too high for the output that I'm getting? What was my return on the investment? And based upon these conversations with your CFO, these should empower you to make those everyday business decisions, okay? What's ultimately happening is that your CFO as your special force, they're that right arm, right? They're making it easy for you to understand what's happening in your business from a financial perspective and how that translates to how you're operating your business. They're helping you to strategize. How are we going to grow? How can we become more profitable? Our margins are too low. How do we get them higher? These are the conversations that you want to be having with your CFO. Ultimately, financial planning, right? I want every single one of you on, if you're listening to the replay or you're here today as a small business owner, one of the critical parts to being confident in the direction you're taking your business, confident into what's possible financially in your business is going to be your financial plan. And that's where that CFO is going to step in. That CFO is going to help you do your financial planning on that annual basis. So you can know exactly what goals you're setting. Are those goals realistic or not? And how you will achieve those goals. Now, I want to say that again, how you will achieve those goals, because it's the how that's the critical part. It's amazing, amazing, amazing to have a goal. But we also have to know, how do we make it a reality, right? How are we going to make sure that we're going to hit that financial goal, right? So think of your CFO as really one of those financial forces that's like your strategic partner, right? They're that right hand with you helping to make those business decisions. So one of the core pieces and why it's at the top of the thread here is because at the bottom, we do need the information that bookkeeper's doing to help us to develop your strategy right hand in hand with you, okay? And one of the questions that was great that came through earlier was around, like, I may be a little bit comfortable just handing my finances off to someone. Well, that's also when you think about the trifecta, there's some different checkpoints, right? And with your CFO at top, you're working hand in hand with that CFO to ensure, like, does everything look right? Is the direction that I'm steering the ship, doesn't make sense, okay? So here's what I want you to do for your action here, okay? So I actually will put this in the chat for you guys. I'll wait till the end. But ultimately, one of the things that I want you to do before you meet with your CFO is I want you to have this idea of if your business is already properly positioned to reach your financial goals, okay? And if it's not, then you can come into with your CFO with that information. So I'll make sure that at the very end, I'll put the link to that quiz, and it's where you can just go through and see, is your business properly positioned to reach your financial goals? And if not, specific things that you do, Okay, so what I want you to do to take action is I want you to take that quiz, but I also want you to reach out to have the date that you want to reach out to a CFO. Again, third time's a charm, but put down the date, because when we put down the date, we achieve those things and they become real. Okay. All right, so let me take a look at the chat here and let's see what questions you have. All right. Flat rate. Okay, this is a great question. So Jenny, you said, how do you best determine if you need a controller or a CFO? And the core question here, it really determines, or it depends on, what level of strategic support are you looking to have, right? A controller will provide you a lot of the financial analytics piece that your CFO will do. But for a small business, you typically don't need the controller maybe and the CFO in early stages, right? So a lot of CFOs do controller type of work, but what I want you to more so determine before saying, hey, I'm going to hire the CFO, or I'm going to hire a controller, say, what type of CFO level strategic support do I want? Do I want that thought partner with me that is making those, helping me to make the decisions? Do I want that person that's going to come along with me throughout the journey, help me as I'm making the capital raising decisions, and really, again, be that right arm? Or do I want someone that's that's going to help me analyze the information, and then I can take it from there? Because if you want more so just analyze it for me, I can take it from there. It sounds like maybe a controller would be what I recommend in that situation. But if you're more so like, I want you along this journey, help me with the capital raising decisions, help me, reforecasting, help me be that strategic thought leader to me as a CFO, and then, or I'm sorry, as a CEO, then a CFO may be a better fit in that case. All right. Let's see what else. Great question. Krish has another great question here. Can one person do all three, bookkeeping, CPA, and one person could do all three? Absolutely. But what I would say, Kush, is that it goes back to that example I used of your general practitioner that's the doctor, and then you have your specialized area where you go to your dermatologist, you go to your eye doctor, you go to your dentist. Okay, so there are, your trifecta. That's going to be your financial forces that are the specialty areas. Okay, so that's going to be the difference there. One person could do all three, but ultimately it's no different than how you have the different areas for your different health needs. Okay. All right, so with that being said, one of the things that I promised you all that I would do is I would go to some Q&A, okay? But to sum it all up, having a bookkeeper, it leads to accuracy in your financial statement. And that helps your certified tax professional to minimize your tax liability, and it supports your CFO to better develop those financial strategies for you to implement, such as, do I need to raise capital? Do I not? When will I run out of cash? How do we change our pricing? Do we need to change the model? So these three is going to be your powerhouse together of your financial forces. Bookkeeper, they're critical to developing those accurate financial records. The certified tax professional, they're going to be absolutely critical to minimizing your tax liability and staying compliant, right? Because you work so hard, you definitely want to make sure that you are compliant in the process, right? And then ultimately your CFO, they're going to support with things like financial strategy, financial planning and analysis, and it's going to be a critical to you achieving those long-term financial objectives that you have, reaching those goals, knocking them out of the park. Okay, so these are your three, those special forces. So ultimately, let's open it to Q&A at this point, and I promised you that I would put also the link into where you can take the quiz as well. I'm going to pop that in. And this is kind of where you can take the 2 minutes to see, are you already positioned to reach your financial goals? If you are, amazing, but if not, some specific things to do there as well. All right, so dropping it in the chat box. All right, any questions? Free, like literally when I say ask me anything, go for it. And I will scroll back up just to make sure that I didn't miss any questions. And in the meantime, feel free to put new ones, and I'm just going to make sure that I didn't accidentally skip someone's question. Katie, yes, I do think that, or I know that FFC will make the recording available. Rachel, you're Goldman and NYU alum, love it. And Trisha, you're Deloitte too, that's amazing. All right, let's see, let me just scroll through, make sure I didn't miss any of your questions. And MC, your question on tips for finding the reputable bookkeeper, I kind of gave you some considerations earlier, but I want to say this across the board. When you're hiring your financial forces, one of the best things I can recommend is referrals, right? Like Females Founder Collective has an amazing community, like ask within that community, right? Like referrals that you can get is really, really, I'd say not only with your financial special forces, but across the board as well. Okay, this was a great question, Jenny. I did miss your question. So you said if you're in the pre-seed spot and you're in the middle of fundraising, when do you recommend hiring a bookkeeper? So if you're pre-seed, what I would more so ask, Jenny, are you pre-revenue and are you incurring expenses at this point? If you're pre-seed, the same thing goes before, are you ready for that bookkeeper? If you're having transactions that are happening from a cost perspective or revenue, or even if they're lower, you can go ahead and get a bookkeeper right now at this point. It's really never too early once you start generating revenue and incurring those expenses to have the bookkeeper if it fits within your budget, okay? And one of the things too, whenever you're talking to a bookkeeper, Jenny, I would make sure that they're aware that you're really early on, you're really pre-seed, you may have fewer transactions now, but they could pick up later. So I would make sure they're clear on that because they can work with you as well on how they help you to manage your books from the very beginning to when you actually grow and scale, okay? All right, let's see anything else. Okay, so another one, great one for, okay, so Holly, so let's see, said, okay, not so beautiful in the pyramid, but would love to know about how to budget for PR. Right, okay, so PR, now keep in mind, PR isn't one of your financial special forces. PR is a critical part to your marketing strategy, okay? So absolutely, I love that you're thinking in the terms of having that budget to market 1,000%. And when it comes to your special forces, when you're developing that financial plan, it's going to be the peak of the trifecta that's going to help you with that. And that's the CFO who's going to help you with the financial planning and analysis, that's going to help you create the budget that will help you to understand how much can you actually afford to pay in PR, and more importantly than how much can you afford, what revenue are you anticipating to be tied to that PR person, okay? So if having PR is part of the marketing strategy that you developed with your marketing person, guess what? That's that conversation with your CFO that when you're developing your budget to say, okay, how much can I actually afford, or can I afford this? Does it make sense? And ensuring that what you're spending is tied to that revenue in your projections. What is the output that is expected for PR? MC, you said, is there a company size where you need to hire a CFO? So you said you're a solo founder, you have no employees. Do you need a CFO? So ultimately, it's not too early to hire a CFO. Like, for example, a lot of people will hire CFO services when they're doing the financial planning piece, right? So if you are just getting started in C, but you know that you want to grow and scale, one of the things early on that I always recommend is you have that financial plan, and you can work with a professional, a CFO at that point to say, hey, let's develop the financial plan. Maybe you don't employ them at that point to help you with actually the financial analytics piece, but they're solely focused with you on building the plan. And then as your business grows in scale and you're having these transactions that are coming in, then maybe you can ramp up with that CFO on supporting you month to month with the analytics. But at first, if you're just, you're solo, you have no employees, you may want to consider using the CFO to help you with the planning part early on, maybe some analytics, but you're not going to, maybe, again, I don't know how many transactions you do a month, but ask yourself, do I need that second eye? How comfortable do I feel with my finances? Do I want that strategic thought partner? Then it could still make sense for you to have them. So I know it depends, but that's what you want to consider. Okay. All right, let's see. Okay. So Deborah, you said you're a solo founder. You've been doing your own in QuickBooks. You said you've certainly doing organized library, love it. So will a bookkeeper charge you more for organizing as opposed to starting? And that's a great question. So the crux of what Deborah is asking here is that ultimately she has QuickBooks, right? So maybe her bookkeeper would come in and organize things versus starting from scratch. So ultimately, if you go to your bookkeeper, Deborah, what I want to recommend is tell that bookkeeper, like, hey, I have things going on at this point. I just need to get help organizing. Okay. I need help kind of getting things sorted out, and they should be able to support you at that level. But ultimately, what I do want you to keep a keen eye on, Deborah, is, are you confident in your library shelves? Are you confident in how you have been doing it? Because a bookkeeper can also help you sort things out. They may propose new library shelves that you need, okay? So be open to that. Now, as far as what they charge, it's going to depend so greatly, because sometimes when it comes to bookkeeping, it can be just as time consuming for a bookkeeper to organize what's there as it is if they had just started from scratch themselves, okay? All right, so ultimately what I want to, we are at time here. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is ultimately, you can reach out to me. When I say I'm putting my contact information up here so that you can leverage it, I really mean that, okay? You can reach out to us via email. You can reach out to us via social. If there's a question that maybe you had and you weren't comfortable asking, that's okay too. You can shoot us a note. If you go through that quiz and you get the quiz results, and it's just financesavvyceo.com/FFC quiz, and you say, hey, how do I interpret my results? Or I'm not sure, I might be in the middle. Happy to chat about it. But you guys were amazing. Thank you for being so engaged. Let me turn it over to Avery, because I know she has some final announcements for you all.
Thank you so much, Marguerite. That was amazing. Everyone's saying how helpful it was. The chat is blowing up with a lot of thank yous. And I just want to echo that. And also a big thank you for everyone who joined us today. This is a reminder to check your emails. You'll get one immediately after this event. Just let us know what you thought of this week's events. Let us know how we can improve. Also, this evening, you will be receiving a second email from events at the10thhouse.co that will include a link to view all of the recordings and replays from this week as well as last week. You'll also learn more information about Female Founder Collective and the 10th House inside of there. And this is a reminder to mark your calendars for next week. So next week is the finale of this 3-week series. We have an amazing interview coming up with Morgan Devon. She's going to be talking about things like investing personal money into your business, managing your expenses as you grow, and finding the right time to raise capital. So that is going to be a really meaty conversation with her and our co-founder, Allison Wyatt, which I'm over the moon about. And then also we'll have a workshop to help you know what type of debt is right for your company. So it will teach you about maximizing cash flow without giving away equity by determining how much debt is right for you and your company. So next week is jam-packed with information. There will also be some exciting announcements next week. So mark your calendars for that. If you have any questions for us, go to femalefoundercollective.com. You can pop your name into our contact information at the bottom to ask any questions, or you can sign up for our newsletter there. So I will see you all next week. Thank you so much for joining, and thank you again, Marguerite. Bye.